Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon and watched the alien ships approach. 3 months had passed since Earth made first contact with the Zephyrian Alliance. The aliens looked like tall, thin humans with gray skin and large black eyes. They spoke perfect English and seemed friendly enough. "Captain, the Zephyrian delegation is ready to board," said Commander Ryan Brooks. He was a good man, experienced in dealing with difficult situations. Morrison trusted him completely. "Let them come aboard," Morrison said. "Make sure Dr. Carter is ready to meet them." Dr. Lisa Carter was Earth's best scientist when it came to studying alien life. She had been working day and night to understand the Zephyrians since first contact. The aliens claimed they wanted to be friends with humans. They offered amazing technology in exchange for simple things like human art, books, and what they called biological samples. The Zephyrian leader, who called himself Ambassador Vex, walked onto the bridge with 2 other aliens. They all wore simple gray uniforms and moved with strange, flowing motions. "Captain Morrison," Ambassador Vex said with a slight bow, "we are pleased to continue our cultural exchange program. Your species shows great promise." Morrison nodded. Politely, something about the way Vex said promise made him uncomfortable, but he pushed the feeling aside. Earth needed allies in the galaxy, and the Zephyrians were offering advanced medical technology that could save millions of lives. "We appreciate your friendship," Morrison replied. "Dr. Carter has prepared several art collections and literature samples for your review." The next few hours went smoothly. The Zephyrians examined human paintings, listened to music, and read poetry. They seemed especially interested in children's books and drawings. Dr. Carter took notes on everything they said and did. "These young human creations are fascinating," Vex told her. "The way your offspring express creativity shows unique brain development. We would very much like to study this further." "What kind of study?" Dr. Carter asked. "Simple observations. Perhaps we could visit one of your colonies where human children live and work. We could learn much from watching them in their natural environment." Dr. Carter looked at Morrison. The captain thought for a moment. The Zephyrians had been nothing but helpful so far. They had already given Earth the plans for a new energy source that was completely clean and safe. "I think that could be arranged," Morrison said. "Our colony on Kepler 442b has several families with children. The colony administrator is Kate Walsh. She has an 8-year-old son named Danny." Ambassador Vex's large black eyes seemed to shine with interest. "Perfect. We would be honored to visit this colony and observe your young ones." 2 weeks later, the Zephyrian research team arrived at Kepler 442b. The colony was small but growing, with about 500 people living in a beautiful valley surrounded by purple mountains. The air was clean and the weather was always pleasant. Kate Walsh met the aliens at the landing site. She was a strong woman who had helped build the colony from nothing. Her son Danny was with her, a curious boy with bright blue eyes and messy brown hair. "Welcome to our home," Kate said. "Danny has been asking about you since he heard you were coming." Danny stepped forward and looked up at the tall aliens. "Are you really from another planet?" he asked. Ambassador Vex looked down at the boy with what seemed like a smile. "Yes, young human. We come from far away. We are very interested in learning about children like you." For the next few days, everything seemed normal. The Zephyrians visited the colony school, watched children play, and asked many questions. They were especially interested in Danny, who was smart and friendly. The boy enjoyed showing them around and answering their questions. Lieutenant Alex Turner was the security officer for the human delegation. He was a careful man who noticed things others missed. Something about the way the Zephyrians watched the children made him uncomfortable. They took too many pictures and asked too many questions about human biology. On the 5th day, Danny disappeared. Kate Walsh ran through the colony calling his name. The other parents joined the search. The Zephyrians helped look for the boy, but they seemed calm, too calm for Turner's liking. "He was playing near the Zephyrian research station," Kate told Morrison over the radio. "Then he was just gone." Morrison and Turner rushed to the colony. They found Kate crying in her home, surrounded by worried neighbors. The Zephyrians had gathered in their research station and would not let anyone inside. "We are sorry," Ambassador Vex told the humans. "The boy wandered into a restricted area of our station. Our atmospheric processes were running tests. He was killed instantly. There was nothing we could do." Kate screamed and fell to her knees. The other colonists were angry and sad. Morrison felt sick to his stomach. "How could they have let this happen? We want to see the body," Turner demanded. "Impossible," Vex replied. "The atmospheric processors completely destroyed all organic matter. There is nothing left to see." Turner did not believe them. That night he snuck around the Zephyrian research station. The aliens had security cameras everywhere, but Turner knew how to avoid them. He found a hidden entrance and slipped inside. What he discovered in the station's computer files made his blood run cold. There were videos of Danny, but the boy was not dead. He was alive, screaming, and being tortured by the Zephyrians in ways that Turner could barely watch. The aliens had been lying. They had taken Danny for their experiments, and they were hurting him badly. Turner copied the files and transmitted them to Earth using an encrypted signal that the Zephyrians could not trace. The message reached Admiral Patricia Stone at Earth Command 3 days later. When she watched the videos, she immediately called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. The war was about to begin. Admiral Patricia Stone was drinking her morning coffee when the encrypted message arrived at Earth Command. She had been expecting regular reports from the Kepler 442b colony, but this transmission was different. It came through the highest security channels and was marked as extremely urgent. Stone was a tough woman who had seen many horrible things during her 40 years of military service. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion, survived the asteroid mining wars, and helped build Earth's first deep space fleet. Nothing had prepared her for what she saw in Lieutenant Turner's files. The videos showed 8-year-old Danny Walsh strapped to a metal table in what looked like a laboratory. The Zephyrians had connected wires to his head and body. They were causing him pain and recording his reactions. The boy was screaming and crying, begging them to stop. Stone watched for only 30 seconds before she had to turn away. Her hands were shaking as she called her assistant. "Get me President Hayes on the secure line right now," she said. "Then call an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Tell them it's a matter of planetary security." Within 2 hours, the most powerful people on Earth were sitting in the underground conference room beneath the White House. President William Hayes looked tired and worried. He had been dealing with trade disputes and colony problems all week. He had no idea his world was about to change forever. "Show them the files," Stone told her aide. The room fell silent as the videos played on the large screen. Some of the leaders looked away. Others sat frozen in shock. Defense Secretary Robert Clark actually got sick and had to leave the room. "How long has this been happening?" President Hayes asked quietly. "According to Turner's intelligence, at least 3 weeks," Stone replied. "But there's more. The Zephyrians have been doing this to other species for decades. They call it research, but it's torture. Pure and simple torture." Dr. Harrison Blake, Earth's top military strategist, had been studying the Zephyrian files all morning. He was a quiet man who preferred books to people, but his mind was brilliant when it came to understanding how civilizations worked. "Mr. President," Blake said, standing up slowly, "I've analyzed their entire power structure. The Zephyrians don't see other species as equals. They see us as animals to be studied and used. Their whole civilization is built on the suffering of others." "What do you mean?" Hayes asked. Blake pulled up a holographic display showing the Zephyrian Alliance territory. They control 17 star systems with 43 inhabited worlds. But they're not the only species living there. They've conquered dozens of other races over the past 1,000 years. They keep them as slaves, test subjects, and food sources. The room erupted in angry voices. Some leaders wanted to break off. "All contact with the Zephyrians immediately." Others demanded military action. A few suggested trying to negotiate for Danny's release. "There will be no negotiation," Stone said firmly. "I've been in contact with Captain Morrison. The Zephyrians are still claiming the boy is dead? They're lying to our faces while they torture him. President Hayes raised his hand for silence. What are our options? We have three choices, Blake replied. 1, we pretend nothing happened and continue diplomatic relations. 2, we cut off contact and hope they leave us alone. 3, we go to war. War? Hayes looked shocked. Against an entire star-spanning civilization? They're centuries ahead of us in technology. Are they? Stone asked. Turner's files include detailed scans of their equipment. Yes, they're advanced, but not impossibly so. We've been studying their technology for 3 months during these cultural exchanges. Our scientists have learned a lot. Dr. Amanda Foster, Earth's leading weapons researcher, spoke up from the back of the room. I've been working with the Zephyrian energy technology they gave us. I think I can reverse engineer it and create weapons specifically designed to counter their defenses. How long would that take? Hayes asked. 6 months, maybe less if we put every resource into it. Stone leaned forward. Mr. President, we need to make a decision. That boy is still alive, and every day we wait, he suffers more. But this isn't just about Danny anymore. If we let this happen, the Zephyrians will think humans are weak. They'll take more of our children. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked around the room at all the faces staring at him. I need to know something. If we do this, if we go to war, will we have the support of all Earth's colonies and nations? The files are already being transmitted through secure channels to every major world leader, Stone replied. Colony administrators, military commanders, corporate executives. Everyone will know what happened to Danny Walsh within the next few hours. As if on cue, Hayes's communication device began buzzing with incoming calls. The first was from the President of the European Federation. The second was from the Colony Council of Mars. The third was from the Mining Guild of the Asteroid Belt. Every single message was the same. What do you need from us? Colonel Maria Santos, commander of Earth's newest fleet, was at the Neptune shipyards when she received the call. She had been overseeing the construction of 3 new battleships when Stone's message arrived. Maria, Stone said over the video link, how fast can you mobilize every ship we have? For what purpose? Santos asked. War. Santos was quiet for a moment. She had served under Stone for 10 years and had never seen her commander look so serious. Give me 72 hours. I can have 200 ships ready for combat operations. Make it 3,000. Admiral, we don't have 3,000 ships. We will. Every nation, every colony, every corporation is going to contribute. We're going to build the largest fleet in human history. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian Research Station on Kepler 442b, Ambassador Vex was reviewing the latest test results on the human child. The boy's pain responses were fascinating. Human neural pathways were much more complex than those of other species they had studied. The subject is showing remarkable resilience, Vex told his research team. Even after 3 weeks of testing, his brain patterns remain stable. This species may be more useful than we initially thought. His assistant, a younger Zephyrian named Klex, looked worried. What if the other humans discover what we're doing? Vex made a sound that was the Zephyrian equivalent of laughter. They are a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. Even if they found out, what could they do? Complain to their diplomatic council? Send us an angry message? But what if they attack us? With what? Their tiny fleet of exploration. Vessels? We have been conquering worlds for 1,000 years. We have weapons that can destroy star systems. The humans are nothing but advanced animals. They will do nothing because they can do nothing. Vex returned to his work, completely unaware that across the galaxy, the most dangerous species in the universe was preparing to show him exactly what humans could do. When someone hurt their children, the files had spread to every human world. The anger was building. The fleets were mobilizing. The weapons were being built. The Zephyrians had made the greatest mistake in their long history. They had tortured a human child, and now they were going to learn why that was the worst possible thing they could have done. General Frank Thompson had never seen anything like it in his 35 years of military service. Every shipyard from Earth to the outer colonies was working around the clock. The sound of construction filled the void of space as thousands of workers built the largest fleet humanity had ever created. Thompson stood on the observation deck of the Mars orbital station and watched 3 new battleships take shape. Sparks flew from welding torches as crews worked in shifts that never ended. The workers had seen the videos of Danny Walsh. They knew what they were building these ships for. "General," his aide Captain Steve Murphy said, approaching with a datapad, "the latest production reports." Thompson took the pad and studied the numbers. In just 2 months, humanity had built more warships than in the previous 50 years combined. Every nation on Earth had emptied their treasuries. Every colony had sent their best materials. Every corporation had retooled their factories for war production. "How many ships do we have ready for combat?" Thompson asked. 1,200. "And counting," Murphy replied. "Admiral Stone wants 3,000 by the end of next month." "We'll have them," Thompson said firmly. "The asteroid mining stations are working overtime to provide materials. The Luna shipyards just finished their 5th heavy cruiser this week. Even the civilian cargo ships are being converted into troop transports. In the weapons research facility on Europa, Dr. Amanda Foster was working on humanity's newest and most terrible creation. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. The holographic display in front of her showed the design for something that had never existed before. "Doctor, you need to rest," her assistant Dr. Ben Carter said with concern. "I'll rest when that boy is safe," Foster replied without looking up from her work. "Have you finished the quantum field calculations?" "Yes, but Amanda, are you sure about this? These weapons are beyond anything we've ever built. They don't just destroy targets. They unravel the fabric of space itself." Foster finally looked up from her work. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but they burned with purpose. "The Zephyrians have been torturing children for centuries. They think they're superior beings who can do whatever they want to lesser species. It's time someone taught them they're wrong." She turned back to the holographic display. The weapon design looked simple enough, but the science behind it was terrifying. When deployed, it would create a quantum disruption field that would tear apart the bonds holding matter together. Anything caught in the field would simply stop existing. "How many of these can we build?" Foster asked. "If we use all our quantum materials, maybe 50, Carter replied. "Make it 100. Strip every research facility if you have to. I want enough firepower to turn their worlds into empty space." On the other side of the solar system, Captain Nicole Davis was preparing for the most dangerous mission of her career. She commanded the Stealth Reconnaissance Division, and her job was to gather intelligence on Zephyrian worlds before the attack began. Davis was a quiet woman who preferred to work alone. She had spent years mapping the outer regions of space, always staying hidden from alien sensors. Now she would use those skills to scout enemy territory. "Captain," her communications officer Lieutenant Paul Green said, "we're receiving the latest intelligence from Lieutenant Turner on Kepler 442b. Davis reviewed the data on her screen. Turner had been secretly monitoring Zephyrian communications for weeks. The aliens had no idea humans were listening to their conversations. "They're planning to expand their research program," Davis said. After reading the report, "they want to capture more human children from other colonies." The bridge of her ship, the USS Shadow, fell silent. Every member of her crew had families back on Earth or the colonies. The thought of Zephyrian research teams hunting human children made their blood boil. "Ma'am," Green said quietly, "my daughter is 8 years old. She lives on the colony at Proxima Centauri." Davis looked at her young officer. "She be safe, Paul. We're going to make sure of that." Over the next month, Davis led her stealth ships deep into Zephyrian territory. They mapped every world, every space station, every military installation. The Zephyrians never knew they were being watched. What Davis discovered was both shocking and useful. The Zephyrians had grown soft over the centuries. They had been the strongest power in their region for so long that they had stopped expecting real threats. Their defenses were designed to keep primitive species in line, not to fight a real war. They have 43 inhabited worlds, Davis reported back to Admiral Stone. Total population about 200 billion. Their military consists of mostly patrol ships and planetary defense systems. They don't have a real battle fleet. Why not? Stone asked over the secure communication link, because they've never needed one. They've been bullying weaker species for 1,000 years. They can't imagine anyone fighting back. Meanwhile, the mobilization continued at an incredible pace. The colony on Mars sent every piece of metal they could spare. The mining stations in the asteroid belt worked their equipment to breaking point. The research facilities on Europa and Titan shared every piece of technology they had developed, but it was not just about ships and weapons. Dr. Ben Carter was working on something else in his laboratory. He had been studying the biological samples the Zephyrians had requested during their cultural exchanges. He realized the aliens had been planning this from the beginning. They didn't just want to study us, Carter told the research team. They wanted to learn how to hurt us more effectively. Every sample we gave them was used to understand human biology so they could cause maximum pain during their experiments. The revelation made everyone even more determined. The Zephyrians had not just tortured Danny Walsh. They had planned to torture many more human children. This was not a random act of cruelty. It was a deliberate program of evil. In the command center on Earth, President Hayes was coordinating with leaders from every human world. The video conference room was filled with screens showing faces from across the galaxy. Colonial governors, military commanders, and corporate executives all had the same expression of grim determination. The fleet will be ready in 3 weeks, Admiral Stone reported. 3,000 warships, 50,000 support vessels, and enough firepower to level their entire civilization. Are we sure about this? Asked the governor of the Alpha Centauri colony. Once we attack, there's no going back. They'll either surrender or fight to the death. They've already made their choice, Hayes replied. They chose to torture an 8-year-old boy. They chose to plan the torture of more children. Now we make our choice. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that choice would be. On Kepler 442b, Lieutenant Turner was still monitoring Zephyrian communications. He had learned that Danny was still alive, though barely. The aliens were planning to move him to their main research facility for what they called advanced testing. Turner encoded a message and sent it to the fleet. Target confirmed. The boy is still alive. Rescue mission is still possible. The response came back immediately from Admiral Stone. Understood. We're coming. The greatest military force in human history was almost ready. Soon the Zephyrians would learn what happened when someone hurt a human child. Admiral Patricia Stone stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around her, 3,000 human ships waited in perfect formation at the edge of Zephyrian space. The moment had finally come. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Stone, she said into her communications device. Operation Wildfire begins now. Show them what happens when you hurt our children. Across 17 star systems, human fleets appeared simultaneously. The Zephyrians had no warning. Their sensors detected the massive human armada only seconds before the first weapons fired. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the attack on the Zephyrian homeworld. His ship, the USS Horizon, now carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Behind him, 200 other warships emerged from faster-than-light travel and immediately began their assault. Target their orbital defense platforms first, Morrison ordered, then move to the surface installations. The Zephyrian homeworld was a beautiful place with purple oceans and silver cities. It had been the center of their empire for over 1,000 years. The aliens had never imagined it could be attacked. Morrison watched through his viewscreen as human weapons tore through Zephyrian defenses like paper. The aliens had built their shields to stop primitive projectiles and energy beams. They had no defense against quantum torpedoes and gravitational disruptors. Captain, his weapons officer Lieutenant Carol West reported, Their defense grid is down, all orbital platforms destroyed. Good, begin bombardment of military targets on the surface. On the planet below, Ambassador Vex was in his government building when the first human ships appeared in the sky. He had been reviewing reports from their research stations when the attack began. This is impossible, Vex said to his aide. Humans don't have this kind of military power. Our intelligence report said they barely had 200 ships. Sir, his communications officer said with panic in his voice, we're receiving reports from all our worlds. The humans are attacking everywhere at once. They have thousands of ships. Vex felt something he had never experienced before, fear, pure, cold fear. Contact the research station on Kepler 442b, tell them to execute all test subjects immediately. We cannot let the humans recover any evidence of our research. But it was too late. Commander Ryan Brooks was already leading a rescue mission to the station where Danny Walsh was being held. Brooks had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the attack because he blamed himself for not protecting the boy earlier. Security team, breach the station now, Brooks ordered as his ship docked with the Zephyrion facility. The rescue team moved through the station corridors like a deadly storm. They had studied the station's layout for weeks and knew exactly where to go. The Zephyrions tried to fight back, but human soldiers were fueled by anger and determination. Brooks found Danny in a medical laboratory, still strapped to the metal table where he had been tortured for months. The boy was unconscious but alive. His small body was covered with scars and medical devices. Medical team now! Brooks shouted, "Get him to the ship immediately!" As the medics carefully moved Danny to safety, Brooks looked around the laboratory. The walls were covered with screens showing data from hundreds of experiments. The Zephyrions had been torturing the boy and recording every detail. "Sir," one of his soldiers called out, "you need to see this." Brooks followed the soldier to a computer terminal. The screen showed a list of test subjects from dozens of different species. The Zephyrions had been conducting these experiments for centuries. Danny was just the latest victim in a long history of cruelty. "Copy everything," Brooks ordered. "Every file, every recording, every piece of evidence. The galaxy needs to know what these monsters have been doing." Meanwhile, Colonel Maria Santos was preparing to deploy humanity's most terrible weapon. Her fleet had surrounded 3 major Zephyrian strongholds, worlds that served as regional command centers for their empire. "All ships prepare quantum disruption charges," Santos ordered. "Target the 3 worlds simultaneously." The quantum weapons that Dr. Amanda Foster had designed were unlike anything that had ever existed. They did not just destroy matter. They unraveled the very fabric of space and time, creating permanent dead zones where nothing could exist. "Charges armed and ready," Santos's weapons officer reported. "Fire!" The quantum disruption charges struck the 3 Zephyrian worlds at exactly the same moment. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The planets did not explode. They simply stopped existing. Where 3 worlds had been, there was now nothing but empty space that would remain empty forever. The destruction was visible across the galaxy. Other alien species watched in horror as humanity erased entire worlds from existence. The message was clear. This was what happened to those who tortured human children on the Zephyrian homeworld. Vex watched his civilization crumble around him. Human fleets were destroying every military installation, every research facility, every government building. The aliens who had ruled their region of space for 1,000 years were helpless against human fury. "Sir," his aide said with a trembling voice, "we're receiving surrender requests from 15 of our worlds. They want to negotiate with the humans." "And what do the humans say?" Vex asked. "They say there will be no negotiations, no mercy, no survivors." Vex finally understood what he had done. The Zephyrians had seen humans as primitive animals, useful only for experiments and entertainment. They had never imagined that those primitive animals could build a fleet capable of destroying star systems. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the Zephyrian capital city burn. The beautiful silver buildings were now smoking ruins. The purple oceans were filled with debris from destroyed ships. Captain, Lieutenant West said, we're receiving a communication from the Zephyrian leadership. They want to surrender. Morrison thought about Danny Walsh, an 8-year-old boy who had been tortured for months because aliens thought humans were inferior. He thought about all the other children from other species who had suffered the same fate. No surrender, Morrison said quietly. Continue the bombardment? Across the galaxy the pattern was the same. Human fleets appeared at every Zephyrian world, space station, and outpost. The aliens who had spent centuries torturing other species were now facing their own extinction. Dr. Amanda Foster watched the battle reports from her laboratory on Europa. The quantum weapons she had designed were working perfectly. 3 Zephyrian worlds had been completely erased from existence, and the psychological effect on the surviving aliens was devastating. Doctor, her assistant Dr. Ben Carter said, the Zephyrians are abandoning their outer colonies. They're trying to retreat to their core worlds. Let them run, Foster replied. We'll hunt them down wherever they go. Every world, every ship, every last one of them. The battle for the Zephyrian homeworld lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the planet that had been the center of a 1,000-year empire was a dead, burning rock. The silver cities were ash. The purple oceans were empty. Commander Brooks returned to the fleet with Danny Walsh and dozens of other rescued prisoners. The boy was alive but badly injured. The other prisoners were members of various alien species who had been captured for experiments. How many did we save? Admiral Stone asked. 347, Brooks reported. But Admiral, the records we found show that the Zephyrians have been doing this for centuries. They've tortured millions of innocent beings. Stone nodded grimly. Then we finish this. Every Zephyrian world, every station, every ship. We don't stop until their empire is nothing but memory. The greatest military campaign in human history was just beginning. The Zephyrians had learned too late that some species should never be pushed too far. They had tortured a human child, and now they would pay the ultimate price for their cruelty. 6 months after the first human ship appeared in Zephyrian space, the war was over. The Zephyrian Alliance, which had ruled 17 star systems for over 1,000 years, no longer existed. Their worlds were either destroyed or abandoned. Their fleets were scattered debris floating in the void of space. Admiral Patricia Stone stood in the medical bay of the USS Retribution, watching as doctors worked to help Danny Walsh recover. The 8-year-old boy was awake now, though he still had nightmares about his time in the Zephyrian research station. His mother Kate had never left his side since the rescue. How is he doing? Stone asked the head doctor, Dr. Sarah Miller. Better than we expected, Miller replied. The physical injuries are healing well. The psychological trauma will take longer, but he's a strong kid. He's been asking about the war. Stone looked at the boy who had started the greatest conflict in human history. Danny was drawing pictures with colored pencils, his small hands still bandaged from the experiments. He looked up and saw the Admiral watching him. Did you really destroy all their worlds? Danny asked in a quiet voice. Stone sat down beside his bed. Most of them, the ones that are left, are empty now. The Zephyrians are gone, Danny. They can never hurt you or anyone else again. Good, the boy said simply, then went back to his drawing. The few surviving Zephyrians had fled to the unexplored regions of the galaxy. Intelligence reports suggested that maybe a few thousand had escaped in small ships, but they would never be able to rebuild their civilization. They had become refugees in the dark spaces between stars, carrying with them the knowledge that humanity showed no mercy to those who harmed their children. Captain Jake Morrison was now commanding the garrison fleet stationed in former Zephyrian space. His job was to make sure no survivors tried to return and to help the other alien species that had been freed from Zephyrian control. Captain, his communications officer, Lieutenant Carol West, reported, we're receiving another delegation. Request. Morrison nodded. Which species this time? The Altarians. They want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Morrison was not surprised. In the past 6 months, over 30 alien species had contacted Earth requesting friendship treaties. The galaxy had watched humanity destroy an entire star-spanning civilization to save one child, and every species with any sense wanted to be on humanity's good side. The Altarians were a peaceful race of blue-skinned beings who had been enslaved by the Zephyrians for 3 centuries. When human forces liberated their worlds, the Altarians had wept with joy. They had thought they would be slaves forever. "Tell them we'll be happy to meet with them," Morrison said. "But make it clear that we judge species by how they treat their young and their weak." On Earth, President William Hayes was addressing the United Nations for the first time since the war ended. The Assembly Hall was packed with representatives from every human nation and colony. The mood was somber despite their victory. "The war is over," Hayes said from the podium. "We have achieved our goal. The Zephyrians can no longer hurt our children or the children of any other species. But we must never forget the price of this victory." Hayes looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "We erased entire worlds from existence. We destroyed a civilization that had existed for over 1,000 years. We did this because they tortured an 8-year-old boy named Danny Walsh." The room was completely silent. Everyone understood the weight of what humanity had done. "Let this be a lesson to every species in the galaxy," Hayes continued. "We are not conquerors, we are not invaders. We do not seek to rule over others. But we are protectors of our own, and we will burn down the universe itself before we allow harm to come to our children." The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. Every alien species that had diplomatic relations with Earth heard the message. The words were translated into hundreds of languages and spread to every corner of civilized space. Dr. Amanda Foster was working in her laboratory on Europa when she received a visit from General Frank Thompson. The weapons designer had been studying the quantum dead zones that her weapons had created, trying to understand the long-term effects. "Doctor," Thompson said, "I've been getting reports from our survey teams. The dead zones are completely stable. Nothing can exist in those areas of space." Foster nodded. "They're permanent. The quantum disruption fields have created regions where the laws of physics themselves have been altered. Those zones will remain empty for billions of years. And they're visible to every ship that passes through the region?" "Yes, any species that travels through former Zephyrian space will see those empty areas and know what happened there. They'll serve as monuments to what happens when someone hurts a human child." Captain Nicole Davis was leading a diplomatic mission to the Centauri Republic, one of the most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy. The Centaurians had been neutral during the war, but they had watched with great interest as humanity destroyed the Zephyrian alliance. "Captain Davis," the Centaurian ambassador said during their meeting, "your species has demonstrated remarkable military capabilities. We are curious about your intentions now that the war is over." Davis thought carefully before answering. "We want the same thing we wanted before the war. To live in peace, to explore the galaxy, to raise our children in safety. The only difference is that now everyone knows what will happen if someone threatens our families. And if another species were to harm human children, then we would do exactly what we did to the Zephyrians. Complete destruction, no mercy, no survivors." The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. "We understand. The Centaurian Republic wishes to establish strong diplomatic relations with Earth. We believe our species can learn much from each other." Back on Kepler 442b, the colony had been rebuilt and was thriving again. Kate Walsh had decided to stay and help other families who had lost loved ones during the war. She had become a symbol of human resilience, the mother who had waited for her son to come home. Lieutenant Alex Turner, the man who had discovered the truth about Danny's torture, was now a colonel and commanded the security forces for the entire sector. He made sure that no alien species could conduct research on humans without proper oversight. "Colonel," his aide reported, "we've received another request from the Andromedan Collective. They want to study human culture and history." Turner reviewed the request carefully. "Approved, but they follow our rules. No biological samples, no psychological testing, and absolutely no contact with children without parental permission and human supervision." And if they refuse these conditions? Turner looked out the window at the memorial that had been built for Danny Walsh and all the other victims of Zephyrian cruelty. Then they can ask the Zephyrians what happens when you don't follow our rules. Oh wait, they can't. There are no Zephyrians left. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was no longer seen as a young, primitive species that could be pushed around. They were now recognized as the most dangerous civilization in known space. Not because they sought conquest, but because they would do anything to protect. Their own other species began to model their own child protection laws after human standards. The phrase, "don't hurt their children," became common wisdom among alien diplomats. Parents across the galaxy told their young ones stories about the humans who had burned down an empire to save one little boy. Danny Walsh grew up to become a teacher, dedicated to educating children and making sure they felt safe and protected. He never forgot what had happened to him, but he used his experience to help others. He became a symbol of why humanity's response had been necessary. The quantum dead zones remained in space, visible reminders of what had once been 3 thriving worlds. Ships from every species would pass through the area and remember the lesson. Some lines should never be crossed. Humanity had emerged from the war as a galactic power, not through conquest or expansion, but through the demonstration of absolute resolve. They had shown the universe that while they might be young and seemingly primitive, they possessed something that older civilizations had forgotten: the willingness to sacrifice everything for those they loved.